So I'm going to talk about the Kolbrin. This is a fascinating book. If you've never had the opportunity to actually go and read this, well, I think you're going to have fun with this because it is just the most interesting book. So, it is known as the Kolbrin Bible, and before the Christians go bonkers here, understand the Bible is not owned by Christianity. The Bible, in the truest sense, defines a work and also has its roots in civilization that played a critical role in its dissemination. In the classic sense, the term Bible comes from the Greek Biblia, meaning books, which stem from Babylos. Babylos was an ancient Phoenician port located in what is now the central coast of Lebanon. And I want to give credit to this. Go to Kolbrin.com. Marshall Masters did a great job on this book as well. And it is one, as I said, is just a fascinating book. And here's the thing. It is, in many cases, a book that's really misunderstood. It has its notoriety because of what it talks about the crossing, the destroyer. And that is where its popularity has come up. But as a scholar and a seeker of truth and knowledge, you have to begin to say, well, there's got to be more out there than just what I was raised in studying the Bible. So the Kolbrin, it talks about creation, talks about destructions celestially and planet-wide, speaks of many crossings. That's the one thing I really get when you read the book of creation, the book of gleamings, and the book of records on the rest of them. You begin to find out that, well, it fills in for me many of the gaps that I found, particularly that the Bible failed to actually adequately explain. Again, talks about the Nephilim, same thing, talks about Adam and Eve, and talks about Noah. Now, remember, this was 1500 BCE before the Bible was even written. You got to understand that. So, what I really found by reading this book and rereading it is I found it really getting to know God. As I continue my journey in life, God has always been a central theme. And what I come to find out about religion was that all religions will always restrain God. They will redefine God. And I think that that becomes the separator between us as a species. Remember, folks, we're all of the same family. So the Egyptian texts of the bronze books, there you go. Literally, they were. There's a fascinating story on this as to how they got the name of the bronze books. Now, the great thing here is another copy, as you can see. These are ancient books, and there really is a history here, a history that is verifiable. Now, for me, I have had to take the position is that what I was taught was many times, and I believe mistakenly, told that it was literal. It is not. It is a literary work, speaking of the Bible. So, in that quest, you have to become and say, okay, where did these stories originate? Now, the Kolbrin is an ancient secular academic work of other wisdom's texts, and it was traded by Phoenician traders. Now, the Phoenicians sailed the world. They were the ones responsible for actually how we look at trade on the high seas today. It originated in Egypt from the Great Book. That book no longer exists. It was written in hieroglyphics by the Egyptian academics after the exodus of the Hebrews. And what a fascinating story. You know, listen, I always like to read it from both perspectives, you know, from the party that said, oh, we won, and the other one says, well, not so fast there, buckaroo. Here's our take of this. And so it gives you a real nice balance. And again, it fills in what I would say that if I was an Egyptian and watched what unfolded at that time. Again, around 1500 BCE. Now, King Henry II, these kings. Real quick here, story on this dude is that the Glastonbury Abbey, which had the monks in there, Druid monks, by the way, apparently didn't like the fact that the cats over there in the Abbey apparently had knowledge that the king didn't have, and apparently neither did the Vatican. That makes it a threat. Hey, listen, anytime you start telling the truth that goes against the contrary mainstream, you're going to pick up enemies, buddy. It's just like, you know, walking through a field down in Texas where they got bull nettle. You best have yourself on some high boots, if y'all know what I mean. So anyway, the king gets all wrapped around the axle, and he says, all right, he stirred up a crowd. You know how it is that, you know, you send out the trolls, you know, they stir up the crowd. They become the righteous ones. You know what I'm saying? Okay. So anyway, he gets the cats out there. What did they go and do? They go down and burn down the abbey. Yeah. Hoping that the monks are still in it. Well, a number of the monks escaped. What they were able to escape with from the Great Book is what we have today, known as the Kolbrin, the bronze books, and they in turn put those into bronze plates and put it in copper boxes, and that's how it got its story. Now, one of the interesting things that I found in the book was a clear indication, if you take it in today, well, you have to understand, when you read ancient scripts, one of the things why I like reading philosophy, particularly, you know, of the classical period, the golden age. And when you study philosophy, you begin to understand, in order to, when you read the words, you have to be in the head of the person who's writing it. Now, if you can do that, you can begin to understand the person's culture, biases, bigotries, fears. It's all in there. We all have it. So the point into this is that I really do think Moses did have ancient technology. Listen, the Egyptians were clear about it, that they said this God came down from the sky, and he was more powerful than their gods, and basically put a whooping on their butts. Now, they did describe the Hebrews leaving. They did describe a parting of a sea. So, yeah, I think that the question I always had was that when I read the Exodus account, I never quite bought into the numbers. And here's what I mean specifically. So when you read in the book of Exodus, you get the total of the men each tribe contributed to the standing army of the Hebrews, right? And the number came out to 603,799. And I began to do, and this is what really started my awakening. So I went back and I started doing some research. And lo and behold, what I found, this was impossible. At that time, no king, no empire had an army greater than 30,000 men. And if the Hebrews had a standing man army of 600,000, there would have been no empire, no army that could have withstood them. They'd have just marched right in through, and there would have been no need for the 40 years in the desert. See where I'm getting? So what you're probably asking, all right, Wayne, so how many do you think there were really in this? I think probably, 6,000, maybe 10 at the very most. That's just my take. So, back on point. What the Kolbrin does say implicitly, repeating, there is a crossing coming, has been in the past, and we best be ready. The destroyer cometh. And folks, beware of the red dragon. Bet your ass on it, folks. And listen, I don't care what people say. Well, you know, that makes people afraid. Listen, with the snowflakes today, I'm surprised their own shadow doesn't make them afraid. Ain't my problem. Because you know what? When the proverbial, how shall we say, kimchi hits the fan, they're going to be the ones that are going to turn on your ass. They'll be the ones who are going to kill you. They're going to be the ones who are going to take what you got. So, you know, listen, in the human psyche, in our core, is the vibration, the frequency. And when you get into a life and death situation, you'll find when it kicks in. Are you going to fight or flee? It's coming. Fear the destroyer. Yeah, it's bad. I got to tell you what, when you read this and you reread it and you study it for, you know, not only the context, but what you could see a man writing this. Now, he was writing from records. He was writing, in some cases, from firsthand events, eyewitness. And, you know, I know why. Men and women crapped on themselves, pissed all over themselves. Children's hair turned from black to gray overnight. Yeah, it's pretty bad. This is a pretty good, I think, if you want to do what would be a replication of what the Kolbrin speaks about, this is kind of it. They're apparently in a close crossing. From the description, there are literally, it's fire from the heavens. I don't know if you want to call it an electrical event, a plasma event. Most likely plasma. I think it would be the most logical, scientific explanation of what we would be seeing. But they describe it in very, very detail. This gives you an idea of what it could very well look like. Listen, they actually wrote in there that this thing took up literally 3/5 of the sky. I mean, that's pretty, I don't know about you. That kind of gets my attention. So you study about as well, and this is where it begins to have similarities to the Samaritan tablets. It talks about Tiamat and how Earth was formed. That this was the result, that Earth was a result of another planet that was here before called Tiamat. It's in the Samaritan tablets. It's in Stitchen's book, so you can read it in the 12th planet. There have been multiple incursions. It is thought that this is how potentially the moon was formed. There is a lot of things that we are discovering that the ancients knew, and we're quite frankly kind of figuring out, well, how they know this. Throughout history, we have found artifacts that have shown the crossing, that have given the same similar story. Again, going back to the Samaritan tablets, we know that it's clear that this has been the result of coming through before. You know, and Gill Broussard has done some great work. I like, again, you ought to get his work. He'll help explain it to you. And then when you begin to see correlations like this, understanding that they were talking about the Hebrews before the Hebrews were the Hebrews. I'm not quite sure how that happens, but it's happened. So understand the great deluge. Apparently there's been a couple as a result of a crossing. I found that interesting. But again, the similarities between what you read in the bronze books to the Bible, to the Quran, to the Samaritan tablets, to the ancient teachings of Buddha and before them, even Hindu. We have commonality here, and this is why I really encourage you to pick up and read this book. It kind of gives you an idea that, well, maybe there's something more to this than what you believed. I mean, listen, how did the story of Mount Ararat show up in the Sumerian text? I mean, really. Another one is the Emerald Tablet. I'm going to do a video on this because such great wisdom in what was written. And you think that someone put this down on a tablet of emerald. Yeah, dates back to the Egyptian times. Great wise saying, ages to come shall see revival of wisdom. To those who shall inherit thy place on this star, they shall in turn come into wisdom and learn to banish the darkness by light. Yet greatly must they strive through the ages to bring unto themselves the freedom of light. Folks, isn't this what it is? It's always been this battle of wisdom, knowledge, good, evil, light, darkness. I mean, it is the battle of the time. I find this book to be so much more, as I tell you. I come to know God in a much deeper way. I know it sounds odd, but although there are differences in the two documents, there are also way too many converging points. This is the table of contents. You'll find in the book of creation, the book of gleamings, the book of scrolls, the book of the sons of fires, the book of manuscripts, the book of morals and precepts. Folks, you get the 10 Commandments out of this. You really do. You learn so much more. And I love what it says, the dedication. This work is dedicated to the men and women who serve their God by activating the good resident in their hearts. Folks, it's about your vibration, your core frequency. In this, there is the story of Lucifer, Adam, Eve. Quite interesting because you can see how the garden story came about. You really can. The garden story is nothing new. It's been around for a very long time. And in the Kolbrin, again, which was written before the book of Genesis, speaks very definitively of a garden, gives the same boundaries. It's quite fascinating, but the text is a little bit different, and which would make sense. Again, back to the Sumerian tablets. We know of Adam and Eve, the tree of knowledge. We know of the Garden of Eden. All of these things we know of. But more on that later. Let me finish up on what I was here to do. There are changes coming. They are coming. And you can see why. When you look at the fact that Terra is that little dot, and that this is the description of what Nibiru looks like, well, holy cow, Batman. Yeah. Definitely speaks of a pole shift. Definitively. So we know that, there have been pole shifts on planet Earth. The bottom line of it is, it speaks about death is coming. They say a prayer in there. Many times they pray that those who read their words, that they would understand. But they say that mankind will be ignorant, will ignore the warnings the ancients sent to us. They say that there will be those who will try to shut down those of us who begin to speak of what is coming, that there will be persecution against those who speak truth. Who knows? I mean, when you really see the correlation between all this, it's quite fascinating. It really is. Now, some people talk about a rescue. One of the things that I could help not take away, and I read this again and again, is that there may be some validity in this type of thought. So there is going to be an awakening. And And I think there's going to be a release of, I think, wisdom and understanding. I think that we will be prepared for this. It is my hope. But is this the end? Nah, it's not the end, folks. Never is. There's something about our species that we have this odd ability that when we are almost seem to be wiped out on the edge of extinction, we always seem to come back. I don't know how many times this has been played out. Probably more than many of us could even imagine. But there is an awakening taking place. And I say this to you. If you will operate in the frequency of love, in your thoughts, in your words, in your heart, that will begin to send out a resonance. It's called a harmonic frequency, vibration. Others begin to feel it, sense it, and they begin to tune into it. As that begins to spread, you begin to find out that those attributes that are not of love, and if you really want to know, I think the best definition of love is 1 Corinthians 13, 4 through 8. I've spent 45 years studying the scriptures, so I'd say that that would make me an expert. And, there's much more, folks. Much more. So be kind to one another. Always be kind. Show yourself that you can be the example. Let that divine spark in you really begin to shine. Okay, be good.